When I was watching the police beat my dad up on the front lawn of his pub in front of all of his customers and tying him up and putting him in this reinforced police van, it was like the world stopped. And I felt this deep sense of shame, but also this deep sense of I have to do something with my life. My life probably can't get any worse than this without a major death. On my podcast every week, what's your biggest failure? And some people say, oh, well, I don't see failure as failure, it's a lesson. And you just make up for it by doing it again. So no, my biggest failure was only not doing it earlier when I had the chance.
Well, I'll have to dig into some of your books, and maybe you've got a piece of content you can share with us later, just to learn about your whole story. Is there anything like that out there, like one piece of content where you just go through all of that?
Yeah, probably my book, Money. That's the UK's best-selling book on money since it launched. And that did really well here in the UK. Yeah, it's got my journey in there, but it's really an encyclopedia on money and how money works.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of cultural myths around money and just how to make it, how to spend it, how to save it, and compound it. Hey everyone, it's Mike Swigunski here. I am very excited to talk to Rob Moore today, who is a serial entrepreneur, a best-selling author of multiple books. And I've only got one book in my inventory, but Rob has more than 10. So I'm extremely excited to talk to him. Rob's spoken to some of the most famous people on the internet and around the world, including Jordan Peterson and a large variety of other entrepreneurs, internet celebrities. So I'm really excited to catch up with you, Rob. So if you don't mind, just give us a little bit of an introduction. Maybe I only touched on the surface there, but tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, Mike, I've been an entrepreneur for 17 years now, so I feel like a granddad. And in 2005, my dad had a nervous breakdown in his pub in front of all of his customers, and I was working behind the bar for him while I was a bit lost in my life. And I'd got around £50,000 in personal debt, car loans and credit cards and credit cards and credit cards. And my dad had raised me to be an entrepreneur. I worked in his pubs and bars from about age 6, and I liked doing that more than going to school. But the school system, the education system, which I think is a bit outdated, Mike, sort of took me down a road that I just didn't fit. I was, as we say in England, I was a square peg in a round hole. And so I feel like I got lost from sort of age 18 to 26, 27, where I got into debt. What happened with my dad really shook me, and I just felt really lost. And when I was watching the police beat my dad up on the front lawn of his pub in front of all of his customers and tying him up and putting him in this reinforced police van, it was like the world stopped. And I felt this deep sense of shame, but also this deep sense of I have to do something with my life. My life probably can't get any worse than this without a major death. And so to keep the next 17 years really short, Mike, and just read it like a CV, I went to a property networking event. I met my business partner there, first try. We now own 360 property units together, and we have 1,300 tenants. We have the biggest UK property training company. We're over 150 million in sales now. I've written 18 books, many on real estate and on entrepreneurial ventures like money and time management and routine and things like that. I have one of the biggest podcasts in the world called Disruptors. We're 7 years in, nearly 1,000 episodes now. I broke the world record twice for the longest public speech. I have maybe 1.5 million followers on social media. And there's probably some stuff I've missed along the way. I have nearly 150 staff in my offices here. I'm just sat in my studio. And so that's the radio edit, not the full extended remix.
Well, I'll have to dig into some of your books, and maybe you've got a piece of content you can share with us later. Just to learn about your whole story. Is there anything like that out there, like one piece of content where you just go through all of that origin story to where you're at now? Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, probably my book, Money. That's the UK's best-selling book on money since it launched. And that did really well here in the UK. And yeah, it's got my journey in there, but it's really an encyclopedia on money and how money works. Because I think in England, Mike, we have quite a negative association with money and success. And I wanted to bust a lot of those myths.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of cultural myths around money and just how to make it, how to spend it, how to save it, and compound it. And speaking of money, so you talked about real estate, and that was kind of your first business venture. So I'm curious, how did you make your first $1,000 in an online capacity? Not through real estate, through offline, but through online.
Well, I remember this really vividly, Mike, because my business partner and I, over a 2-year period, had bought about 50 properties, only small single family homes, but I could hardly grow a beard back then. You know, we were doing well, we were young, and people have been saying to us, oh, you should teach other people how to do it, or how can I buy 50 properties in 2 years? And Rob, how did you manage to get a business partner and get him to fund all the deals and it be none of your own money? And we started getting these questions everywhere. And I said to my business partner, we should do a course on this. Let's do a what we call in the UK a buy-to-let course, you know, or a property investment course. And we'd built up some contacts and a little database from some Google ads. And I'm talking over 15 years ago, Mike. Anyway, I just said, right, let's do a networking event. Let's give everyone a free ticket. I'd seen a couple of the big Americans do like this seminar funnel model. And I thought, I wonder if we might be able to do something like that. So anyway, to my immense surprise, we got 70 to 80 people filled in this very small London hotel, all to come to listen to us talk about our story of property investing. And without even telling my business partner, at the end of that event, I sold a 2-day property investing masterclass for £2,000, and we sold about 25 of them. So I did a £50,000 sale.
Wow.
First time I'd made any money other than actually owning real estate. And my business partner at the end said, what is this course then? And I said, well, we haven't written it yet, but let's spend the next couple of weeks writing it. And so I sat him down and we wrote this buy-to-let course. So I didn't make my first 1,000. I made my first 50,000 in one go.
Wow. I mean, that's very impressive. I think a lot of people could learn from that trajectory where you were essentially testing an offer and it really resonated with that market. And then you built it afterwards. And, you know, I've done that with a lot of my offers as well. I test ideas. I see if there's any sort of need for that. And the true way to test something, if it's going to work, is, again, like you said, they took out their wallet, they bought it before they even had anything in their hands, and you just kind of build it as you go. And I think that's one of the best ways to build a program, to build a course, or to do any type of service. Don't waste 2 to 3 years building it. Test it and make sure that's a viable product market fit before you go ahead and get started with it. So I guess that's a big focus. You had a slam dunk on the first business success. So what was your first big business failure in the online space?
My biggest business failure in the online space was not getting into it when Steve Jobs started Apple in his garage and investing in the shares. Mike, I get asked this quite a lot, and I want this to sound as humble as possible, and without avoiding the question, because I ask that on my podcast every week. What's your biggest failure? And some people say, oh, well, I don't see failure as failure. It's a lesson. And whilst I agree with them, I actually want them to tell me something they actually failed in. But I have not lost any money. I haven't. We have not made a duff investment. I've never gone bust. I would not want to go bust, Mike. I know there's a culture in America where if you've gone bust once or twice, you know, you're a trier, you're an entrepreneur, you're investable. But I would do everything I could to ensure I didn't go bust. So I've not had a failure in the online space. I mean, look, I've done launches that haven't sold as many as I would have liked, or I've got the pricing wrong, or we haven't filled an event, but you just make up for it by doing it again. So, no, my biggest failure was only not doing it earlier when I had the chance.
Yeah, I think that is definitely, like a lot of my entrepreneurial friends, we don't really internalize it as a failure. It's the learning experience. And a lot of times, you know, like looking back at failures, you know, if it wasn't 1,000x, you might internalize that as a failure depending on what your goals were. And like you mentioned, like some of those things, they might not been as big of a success as you initially thought. And that time it might be a learning experience. So, Rob, you do so much. You're doing a lot of content. You're involved in a lot of businesses. Can you walk us through a little bit of a split of your monetary income? How is that broken down? As somebody who also has a lot of income sources, people are always curious to know, is it 10% from your books or 15% from YouTube? What does that split look like? Just kind of an estimate.
Yeah, I can. Though this might not be to the nth degree accurate.
Right.
So I'll give you some estimation.
Just ballpark.
So I have various training businesses, online and live seminars. We run up to 800 live seminar days a year in the UK. And in terms of gross income, that would be the highest. That might be about 60%. In terms of net income, it's probably more like 40%. And then we have our real estate portfolio, which, like I said, is 1,300 tenants that my company manages, of which 360 of those property units I own with my partner. And so gross income, that might be 25%. Net income, that might be 20%, because that's quite a high margin, that one for us. We haven't got really big mortgages. Whereas, our training business did 19 million in sales last year, but under a 20% profit margin. So actually the real estate income is a higher margin, and we're paying down the loans and we're getting the capital growth. And so then let's just say for argument's sake, 30% left, gross or net. And that's divided between books, my podcast Disruptors, my YouTube channel, my rob.team membership site. I have nearly 10,000 paying members to that. And then I have my personal assets. So I invest in various stocks and other assets for myself. So that's roughly the split. We have a property management company that maybe makes about 10% of our income gross.
Wow, that's fascinating. It sounds like you're fairly heavily involved in real estate, right? If you had to go back and start over again, would you kind of follow the same path? Would you recommend people to kind of go down the real estate investment path, or would you recommend just start something online?
Whenever anyone asks me a question, Mike, would you rather do A or B? My brain can't help but say, well, why can't I do A and B? I'm just a bit of my podcast is called Disruptors. So going back, assuming the world hadn't dramatically changed, I'd probably do the same thing again, Mike. I've done over 150 million in revenue. I'm a kid that came from nothing, was 50 grand in debt. So that's pretty good. I could have failed. So there's one thing I probably would say, my business partner believes maybe we are a bit bloated in real estate. He would like to see us have slightly less of the percentage of our assets in real estate, which means he wants us to maybe buy some other businesses or start some other businesses or build some other assets or build up some of our other assets. Because, we've got tens of millions of debt, and, our portfolio is across the board, not a million miles off 100 million now. And he's a bit worried about the exposure of having hundreds of units in one city. So going back, I'd definitely get into real estate like I did. As soon as I could figure it out and felt like I knew it, I'd definitely get into training it as soon as I could, because it's a great foil. Become great at something, become a millionaire in that venture, and then make millions teaching other people that expertise. That's a great business model. A bit like someone who becomes a black belt in martial arts. My friend, who was Michael Jackson's bodyguard, he became a black belt in martial arts. He bodyguarded Michael Jackson. He became great at that. And then he built the biggest martial arts franchise in the world, teaching others how to do it. That is just such an obvious thing that people don't do. So, but you've got to do it that way round. I think in modern day, Mike, there are a few people that have not really done it. and then trying to teach it before they've done it. But I probably wouldn't do anything differently. What I would do now, though, Mike, is I would definitely leverage digital assets more. So building a membership site, and maybe I own some NFTs, I own some cryptos, owning digital real estate and web domains and things like that, and maybe even metaverse. Obviously, that wasn't around when I started, because I think it's a good foil to have some physical and some digital.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned buying, because that's my background. I helped build the fastest growing company in the United States, a company that helps people buy and sell cash flowing online businesses. And these micro assets can be cash flowing from day one. You can plug it into the Rob Moore Disrupt universe, and just with your audience alone, find a business that's kind of a similar fit and scale the heck out of these businesses, because they already have the product market fit. They've been working for 5 to 10 years. And then you just throw fuel on the fire and kind of blow these businesses up. So I think that's a great fit for somebody like yourself, who's looking to kind of already has that huge exposure in the real estate realm to start acquiring businesses, because it's just such a faster path. It's much easier to go from, $10,000 a month to $100,000 than it is to go from 0 to 10,000, right? That usually is the hard part. So yeah, if you're ever interested in that, let me know. I practice what I preach to and have my own portfolio of software businesses, anything that's cash flowing and has a little bit of a moat around it. So I think, we can have a separate conversation hopefully about that someday. But as far as the disrupt stuff, Rob, what is your kind of plan to continue disrupting the world? What do you have planned in the future?